in the shadowy recesses of the Ottoman Empire's imperial palaces, where the opulent halls of Topkapi Palace in Istanbul and the later grandeur of Dolmabahce Palace along the Bosphorus echoed with the discreet whispers of white and black eunuchs guarding the inner sanctum, the subtle rustle of luxurious silk caftans worn by courtiers and concubines alike, and the distant, melancholic melodies of ney flutes drifting through intricately latticed windows that offered tantalizing glimpses of the shimmering Bosphorus waters below. The Sultans, those absolute rulers who commanded vast armies across 3 continents, administered justice through divine decree as the caliphs of Islam, and embodied the ultimate fusion of temporal power, religious authority, and personal sovereignty, harbored a deeply private realm of fantasies, special desires, and intimate preferences that intricately intertwined sexuality with the realms of politics, cultural tradition, and individual eccentricity. Often veiled in layers of secrecy, but occasionally glimpsed through the analytical lenses of historical chronicles, first-hand traveler accounts from curious Europeans, and modern scholarly dissections that peel back the layers of myth to reveal underlying truths. This enigmatic domain of Sultan fantasies, encompassing a wide array of special requests and desires, was far from being merely a salacious footnote to their illustrious reigns, but rather a profound reflection of the broader Ottoman cultural attitudes towards sexuality, where a remarkable fluidity in preferences ranging from intense heterosexual indulgences within the confines of the sprawling harem, complexes to more discreet homosexual liaisons with young male attendants known as Ike, and even extending to highly unconventional fetishes that pushed the boundaries of societal norms, coexisted harmoniously with the strictures of Islamic pieties, entrenched societal norms, and the pressing imperatives of dynastic continuity through the production of legitimate heirs, spanning from the empire's formative years in the 15th century under legendary conquerors like Mehmed II, who dramatically expanded the realm to unprecedented heights by capturing Constantinople in 1453 and transforming it into the imperial capital of Istanbul, to the decadent and reform-oriented 19th century under progressive sultans like Abdolmasad I during the Tanzimat era's ambitious push for administrative modernization, westernization, and legal reforms that sought to align the empire with European standards. These preferences were meticulously documented in sources as diverse as the expansive and vividly descriptive 17th century Sehatnam by the renowned Ottoman explorer and chronicler Evliya Çelebi, who chronicled court life with a captivating mix of awe, intricate detail, and occasional exaggeration. The confidential dispatches of European diplomats laden with Orientalist fascination and intrigue, such as those penned by the Venetian Bailo, who regularly reported on palace gossip and behind-the-scenes machinations to the Doge, and contemporary scholarly works like Leslie P. Peirce's groundbreaking The Imperial Harem, Women and Sovereignty in the Ottoman Empire, which rigorously analyzes gender dynamics and power structures through meticulously examined archival records from the Ottoman state archives, and Irvin Selçuk's in-depth studies on Ottoman erotica and visual culture that illuminate a society surprisingly tolerant of sexual pluralism and diversity in expressions of desire, far removed from the stereotypical and often caricatured image of hedonists perpetuated by Western romantic fantasies in the exoticized paintings of Jean-Auguste Ingres or the sensational novels of Gustave Flaubert. These sultans navigated their personal desires within a complex framework of absolute power, where sexual choices could strategically forge political alliances, ensure the production of heirs to perpetuate the dynasty, or even precipitate dramatic downfall through scandals or excesses, all while adhering or at least appearing to adhere to the religious taboos against excess, adultery, and sodomy, as interpreted and enforced in the Sharia courts by ulama scholars. This comprehensive exploration delves deeply into specific examples drawn directly from historical records, carefully separating salacious myths propagated by biased observers from substantiated accounts, verified through cross-referencing multiple sources, to uncover how these private indulgences not only shaped the sultans' personal lives, but also influenced the empire's intricate web of court intrigue, where a sultan's whimsical request could elevate a lowly favorite to unimaginable heights of influence and wealth, or consign a perceived rival to oblivion in the shadowed, forgotten corners of the inner palace quarters reserved for the royal family and their intimates. To grasp the full spectrum and nuanced complexity of Ottoman sultans' special sexual preferences, one must first contextualize them within the empire's unique and multifaceted socio-cultural landscape, where sexuality was viewed less through the rigid binaries of modern Western categories, like heterosexual or homosexual, and more as a fluid continuum of tastes and inclinations, akin to personal preferences in cuisine, attire, or artistic patronage, as articulately analyzed in Schick's scholarly examinations of Ottoman erotic literature and poetry, where male desire was frequently celebrated in ghazals and qasides without carrying the stigma of deviance. In this richly textured milieu, sultans revered as the shadows of God on earth and holders of the caliphate since 1517, enjoyed unparalleled access to a diverse array of partners, facilitated by the institution of the imperial harem for women, housing hundreds of concubines from various ethnic backgrounds, and the system of inner palace pages, Clan Lari for young men recruited through the Devirum levy, with castrated eunuchs ensuring utmost discretion, control, and the prevention of unauthorized pregnancies or scandals. Historical chronicles reveal recurring patterns. Many sultans exhibited voracious heterosexual appetites, siring dozens or even hundreds of children to secure the dynasty against the perils of succession crises. Yet these were often interspersed with homosexual or bisexual inclinations that were socially accepted and even romanticized in elite circles. As evidenced in the cultural phenomenon known as the Age of Beloveds, during the 16th and 17th centuries, a literary and artistic period that romanticized passionate love between older men and youthful boys. Documented in advisory works like Mustafa Ali's Council for Sultans, which offers critiques of courtly excesses while tacitly acknowledging their widespread prevalence among the ruling class. European travelers, such as the astute French diplomat Jean de Thevenot in his detailed 1655 accounts of his journeys through the Levant, marveled at the relative openness of same-sex relations in public spaces like bathhouses, hammams, and coffee houses, where young masseurs known as telaks and cross-dressing dancers called cakeeks catered to the desires of the elite, including extensions into the Sultan's court through private performances and liaisons. Scholarly insights from Walter G. Andrews and Mehmet Kalpak's influential book, The Age of Beloveds, Love and the Beloved in Early Modern Ottoman and European Culture and Society, highlight how poetry composed by sultans themselves, such as Selim the First's verses, extolling the ethereal beauty of male youths, blended elements of Sufi mysticism where the beloved Mabab symbolized divine love and spiritual ecstasy with undeniable carnal undertones that reflected personal experiences. Specific examples from the annals of history abound. Mehdi II, the conqueror of Constantinople, was rumored in confidential Venetian reports by diplomats like Angelo Giovanni Lomellino to have harbored strong desires for young boys, including the infamous episode with Radu the Handsome, the brother of Vlad the Impassive, whom he allegedly favored intimately during Radu's extended captivity at the Ottoman court as a hostage, though historians continue to debate whether this relationship was primarily a tool of political manipulation to secure alliances, or a genuine expression of preference, with the Byzantine chronicler Lonikos Chalko-Kondyles explicitly noting MMD's passion for boys in his historical narratives. Suleiman the Magnificent, despite his legendary and well-documented devotion to his wife Hurrem Sultan, who rose from slavery to become one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history, shared a profound and multifaceted bond with his Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, described in unusually intimate terms by European contemporaries like the Habsburg envoy, Ogier Ghiselin de Busp, who hinted at a relationship that transcended mere friendship and included homoerotic elements, fueling long-standing speculations that this companionship influenced critical state affairs until Ibrahim's shocking execution in 1536 amid swirling rumors of jealousy, power struggles, and perceived overreach. Delving even deeper into the realm of eccentric and highly personalized desires, certain sultans stand out prominently for their unconventional requests and fetishes, blending elements of the bizarre with their unassailable authority in ways that blurred the lines between personal pleasure, psychological quirks, and elaborate political theater designed to assert dominance or alleviate the burdens of rule. Sultan Ibrahim, infamously known as the Mad during his tumultuous reign, from 1640 to 1648, exemplifies this category in stark detail. Historical sources such as the comprehensive annals compiled by the Ottoman historian Naima and the vivid descriptions in Evliya Çelebi's Seyahatname detail his obsessive fixation with corpulent women, dispatching trusted agents across the vast expanse of the empire from the bustling markets of Cairo to the remote villages of Anatolia to procure fat virgins, weighing over 300 pounds, whom he housed in specially designed chambers within the palace, and indulged in elaborate rituals involving ambergris-scented furs imported from distant oceans, where he reportedly derived intense pleasure from rubbing against their ample bodies or watching them bathe in perfumed waters infused with exotic essences, a fetish that may have been rooted in deep-seated childhood traumas from his prolonged confinement in the cave's cage, system that isolated potential heirs to prevent or perhaps as a psychological escape from the pressures of governance. Ibrahim's desires extended even further into the realm of the exotic and unusual, with persistent rumors in European accounts by observers like the English diplomat Paul Ricott of him engaging in bestial fantasies involving animals from the palace menagerie, though these are likely exaggerated for sensational effect. More credibly and verifiably, he demanded women with highly specific physical traits, such as elongated labia or particular natural scents that evoked musk or amber, commissioning custom perfumes and elixirs from the palace's skilled alchemists to heighten arousal and create immersive sensory experiences. As per Madeline C. Zilfi's detailed analysis of harem dynamics and social structures in her scholarly works on Ottoman women and slavery, the sheer decadence and excess of his reign ultimately contributed to his violent deposition by a coalition of janissaries and illustrating in dramatic fashion how unchecked personal desires could destabilize the throne and lead to broader political upheaval. Similarly, Murad III, who ruled from 1574 to 1595 and fathered over 100 children in a prolific effort to bolster the dynasty, was noted in Peirce's exhaustive research for his insatiable heterosexual pursuits, maintaining an enormous harem of approximately 1,300 women from diverse origins and rotating favorites on a nightly basis to satisfy his voracious appetites. Yet contemporary chronicles like those of the historian Seleniki Mustafa Effendi hint at his innovative use of aphrodisiacs such as opium-laced pastes blended with saffron and honey, and the orchestration of ritualistic orgies in specially constructed mirrored chambers that amplified visual sensations through infinite reflections, reflecting a profound fantasy of omnipotence, where sexual conquest served as a metaphor for territorial expansion and imperial dominance. Murad's preferences also included a penchant for virgins hailing from specific regions, such as the fair-skinned Circassian beauties prized for their ethereal allure and trained in the arts of seduction. And he allegedly incorporated elements of tantrical-like practices imported from ancient Persian sources through scholarly exchanges, prolonging intimate encounters through controlled breathing techniques and meditative focuses taught by trusted Sufi advisors, thereby blending spirituality, mysticism, and raw sensuality in a uniquely Ottoman synthesis that elevated physical pleasure to a near-transcendent experience. Homosexual preferences among the sultans were equally well documented in historical sources, often intertwined with themes of mentorship, aesthetic appreciation, and hierarchical power dynamics that mirrored the broader societal structures. Selim II, who reigned from 1566 to 1574 as the son of Sultan the Magnificent, was described in detailed Venetian Relazione diplomatic reports as strongly preferring the company of young palace pages, engaging in pederastic relationships that were normalized and even idealized in Ottoman poetry, where the beardless youth Amrat symbolized the pinnacle of ephemeral beauty and innocence. Evliya Çelebi recounts elaborate court entertainments featuring kekik dancers, young men dressed in feminine attire, performing graceful, hypnotic dances whom Selim favored intensely, sometimes elevating them to positions of significant influence and patronage, echoing the broader societal acceptance of such liaisons as explored in Andrew's comprehensive studies on Ottoman love poetry. Mehmed IV, known as the Hunter for his passion for outdoor pursuits, who ruled from 1648 to 1687, balanced his well-known enthusiasm for the chase across the empire's vast hunting grounds with more intimate bonds to male companions, as subtly hinted in the historical writings of Siladar Findikli Memdega, where royal hunting expeditions often doubled as secluded retreats for same-sex encounters far removed from the prying eyes of the harem and court scrutiny. In the more modern context of the 19th century, Abdulaziz, reigning from 1861 to 1876, faced swirling rumors in the European press and Ottoman memoirs such as those penned by the novelist Halid Ziya, Yüksek of pronounced homosexual leanings, with a particular preference for muscular wrestlers from the imperial tech wrestling houses and youthful bath attendants, a predilection that fueled public scandals during his lavish European tours and may have contributed to his mysterious death in 1876. Debated by historians as either suicide amid mental health struggles or assassination orchestrated by reformist factions seeking to install a more pliable ruler. These desires, however, were not without substantial risks and potential repercussions. Religious conservatives among the ulama, drawing from the strict interpretations of Hanafi jurisprudence that explicitly condemned sodomy liwat as a major sin, occasionally mounted pressures or campaigns against overt displays, as seen in the case of Osman III, who ruled briefly from 1754 to 1757 and actively suppressed public manifestations of homosexuality to project an image of unassailable piety and moral rectitude, yet reportedly indulged privately in such pursuits. According to the accounts of the diplomat and historian Ahmad Resmi Effendi, who chronicled the era's courtly undercurrents, the Ottoman Empire underwent gradual modernization during the Tanzimat period from 1839 to 1876, which introduced sweeping reforms in law, education, and administration influenced by European models. The Sultan's preferences evolved accordingly under the influx of Western cultural elements, with figures like Abdalmesid I incorporating French erotica into their personal repertoires, avidly reading provocative works like those of the Marquis de Sade and experimenting with elements of bondage and role-playing in harem scenarios, as suggested in the diplomatic correspondence of British Ambassador Stratford Canning, Who noted the blending of traditional Ottoman sensual practices with emerging European decadence in palace entertainments? Yet, these elaborate fantasies carried inherent perils and consequences. Overindulgence frequently led to severe health issues, such as venereal diseases documented in the palace's confidential medical records maintained by court physicians, or created political vulnerabilities that rivals could exploit through whispers and plots, as exemplified by Mahmud II's reign from 1808 to 1839, where rumors of incestuous interests and half-sisters largely debunked by modern historians as fabrications by opponents persisted in folklore and served to undermine his authority during periods of reform. Scholarly works like those of Dror Zevi, in producing desire, changing sexual discourse in the Ottoman Middle East, 1500 a 1900, frame these preferences as products of a fundamentally sex-positive culture, where sexual pluralism flourished openly, until the infiltration of Victorian-era moralism through Western-influenced reforms began to impose more restrictive norms and encourage greater secrecy. In the twilight years of the empire, under the long and autocratic reign of Abdülhamid II from 1876 to 1909, personal preferences shifted markedly toward discretion and surveillance amid the sultans' establishment of a vast network of spies and informants, with his innovative use of early photography to capture private scenes and moments within the palace, as preserved in select archival materials, marking a fascinating transition to modernity, where technology intersected with desire. These fantasies, far from being mere vices or indulgences, embodied the sultan's inherent humanity amid their godlike status, profoundly influencing Ottoman art, literature, poetry, and even policy decisions, as strategic sexual alliances often forged unbreakable loyalties among courtiers and favorites. As the Republic emerged in 1923 under Mustafa Kemal abolishing the Sultanate and Caliphate in a sweeping secular revolution, these once guarded secrets gradually faded into historical obscurity, yet they continue to echo resonantly in modern discussions of the Ottoman legacy, revealing a rich tapestry of desire intricately woven with the enduring threads of power, culture,